Everybody, welcome back to another 1010 Baltimore Community Awareness Talk Show. Today is June the 27th. It's the last Monday in the month of June, and this will be our final show for the summer. This will be our final talk show for the summer. We will reconvene with our talk show series in September. So I hope you all find something to do on your Mondays, since you won't be tuning in here anymore. But I'm glad to be in and out our summer with a very special guest who's going to enlighten us on some information. Our special guest for this evening is going to be none other than family magistrate Robert Bloom. Welcome to the show, sir. Good to have you. Thank you. So give us a little information about, because you worked at the circuit courthouse, is that correct?
I was a magistrate in the circuit court for 15 years. I retired June 30th of last year. I was recalled twice since then to preside, and I told them the last time that I wasn't coming back.
Wow.
I'm finished.
All right, so give us a little information on what you did as a magistrate at the courthouse.
Well, I heard I heard basically all family law cases, custody, visitation, child support, those kinds of cases, divorce cases, for the first 10 years. And for the past 5 years, I was the magistrate who did all the contempt cases for child support, people who didn't pay their child support, establishing child support, modifications of child support, that sort of thing, for the past 5 years.
Wow, wow. Now, out of all the cases you heard in the courthouse, what would you say was the most popular case, like the most heard case? Would it be the child support or divorce? Which one do you think we had more of?
More child support cases.
More child support cases. Now, why do you think we have a lot of child support cases here in Baltimore?
Well, one of the reasons is we've got so many children born out of wedlock, and we've got them born to parents who don't really have a real relationship with each other.
Wow.
They hang out at the club, and at 2 o'clock they go home. They have unprotected sex, and 9 months later, they have their little dividend.
Wow, little Freddie born.
And they don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the big problem I have is when the woman is pregnant, sometime near the end of her term, she has to quit work.
Right.
But her bills go on.
Right.
Father doesn't see that, so he doesn't bother to step up to contribute,
Right.
So that when the child is born, the child has a comfortable place to be, and that the mother is adequately cared for.
Right.
And so he seems to think that that's her problem. Although he had an opportunity to wear a condom, he didn't. She had an opportunity to have an abortion, she didn't. And so now we have this child that they're both responsible for, and so he's got to step up. And the hardest problem I have is getting them to step up and recognize their responsibility.
Wow. So how do you suggest, as leaders in the community, how do leaders in the community reach people effectively enough to say, here's what we can do to help people step up and accept their responsibilities? Like, do you feel there is something leaders can do?
The best thing that leaders can do is set an example. And I'm not going to mention any names, but if you look at entertainers, you've got all these entertainers and rappers and actresses and actors, and they're all having children out of wedlock, one after the other, and that's not a good example.
Right.
When I was growing up, that was unheard of. That was not the sort of thing that happened.
Right.
People didn't have children out of wedlock when I was growing up.
Right.
And nowadays we have all these children who are being born to parents who don't even live together, who barely know each other. And it's not fair to our society. We're creating basically an underclass of poor children who are not being supported.
Wow. So child support being the most heard case of your career as a magistrate. Now, what would you say would be the second most heard case? Would it be divorce?
No, custody is the second most.
Okay, so still dealing with children.
Still dealing with children,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's an issue of control, basically, though. One person wants to control the other by controlling the child or their access to the child. And primarily this is with the mother The mother thinks that first of all, some mothers think that by having a child, this is their way to hold on to this man, because as long as they have the child, he's going to be around. But that doesn't happen. What happens is he moves on to somebody else, even though he has this child. And many times, the person that he moves on to doesn't want him to have a relationship with his child, because that involves a relationship with the mother. And those two, the mother and the person that he moves on to, then become rivals in the relationship. And that's not healthy for anybody, and especially the child. We have mothers who don't want the father's child to go and visit the father, because the child is going to be exposed to the father's new love interest. And she may not approve of the lifestyle, or she may not approve of the person, or she may simply be jealous and angry. But that's not healthy for the child either.
In your opinion, I don't know how much you can share, and I don't want you to have to say anything that you're not allowed to say, but how does the court favor cases where a father is trying to be active and maybe trying to get custody, but they're dealing with the mother of the child that's just being stubborn and don't want the child to see the father, or they're doing everything in their power to fight to keep that child from seeing the father, because the mother is unhappy because her baby daddy, as they call it, has moved on and it seems to be happy in another relationship, and that father still wants to be in the child's life just as active as the mother. But now the mother says, no, I want to get full custody, I want you to see him and stuff like that. Like, how does the court favor? Because typically, when I talk to young men, young brothers, especially on child support, they say things like, man, the woman always will get the child. You know, the court always favors the mother. Is that true in your opinion?
In my opinion, that's not true. What happens, though, is that the father initially tries to have a relationship with the child, and then when he moves on to his new love interest, his interest in the child kind of wanes. And then when the mother of the child says, okay, if you're not going to be in the child's life like I want you to be in the child's life, then I want you to at least pay child support. So once the child support comes into it, then the father's attitude changes drastically. He becomes angry, basically. And so then you hear a lot of the fathers say, okay, I want joint custody. Not because they want joint custody, but because they know that if they have a joint custody order and spend a significant amount of overnights with the child, that cuts their child support. So they're not concerned really about spending time with the child. They're more concerned about reducing the child support.
Yeah, so I'm a victim of the system.
Okay.
So I'm a divorcee. And I also have joint custody of my child from that marriage, you know, and that was one of my situations where I felt like, you know, well, I want to have joint custody not because of the child support primarily, but because I have my son, you know, just as many days as you have, you know. Now there's only 7 days in a week, you know. Right. My son has asked me this question. He said, well, Dad, why do you have me 3 days and Mom had me 4 days? I said, well, son, it's only 7 days in a week. You can't divide it evenly unless we do 3.5, 3.5. He said, no, well, you can do it like this. You get me 1 day and she get me the next day. I said, either way, we're going to boil down to 4 days and 3 days. But I have a good relationship with my son, a working relationship with his mom. But in cases like mine, you know, like how does the court favor a man who has joint custody, who later decides to get full custody because of issues that he sees transpiring with the mother, and maybe the mother's new relationship and things of that nature? How does that work?
Now remember, the issue of custody revolves around the child. It does not revolve around the parents or their circumstances. But if you have a situation where the child is being adversely affected, then you can move for custody. But no matter what custody you have, the other parent is almost always going to have some kind of visitation rights. So you've got to make sure you work out something that's healthy for the child. Now, I've never been a proponent of this 1 day on, 1 day off, or split the week or anything like that. I think the children need more stability than that. you've got a child that's going to school. Now, every night when the child comes home, the child's got to do homework. That homework, the person who helps that child with that homework has to be consistent. You've got children who are involved in extracurricular activities. The parent who's involved with that child in those extracurricular activities has to be consistent. We have children who are not involved in extracurricular activities because one parent or the other parent won't step up and spend the time to take the child to practices, to take the child to games and do that sort of thing. One parent is willing, the other parent is not. They've got this split custody arrangement so that the child only goes to the activities when the child is with a particular parent. That's not the best thing for the child, but the parents don't see it because they're too busy fighting each other.
Wow. So at what age, because I've heard different things now, at what age does the child has to be to decide what parent they want to live with full time?
Well, the child never gets to decide.
Oh, wow.
You don't put a child in a position where a child has to choose one parent over the other.
Mm-hmm.
You never do that. The judge has to look at the entire situation and make the best decision for the child. But you never want to put the child in a position where the child feels like they've got to choose one parent over the other. If you do that, you've got children who will stay with the least satisfactory parent because they feel that that parent will be the one that will be most adversely affected. For instance, you've got young men who will stay with the mothers because they think the mother is going to be lonely if they're not there. Not because that's the best thing for the child, but because the child has concluded that this is the best thing for the parent. You don't want to put the child in that position.
Now, how does it work with the child, or let's just say the father of the child, being on child support? So are you saying that it's impossible for a father who has joint custody to be on child support?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
So he can still be on child support?
Oh, yes. So child support is based upon the incomes of the parties. You take the two incomes of the parties, you add them together, and there's a chart that you look at and you pick out what the amount is that each parent is responsible for, and the mother or the custodial parent then is paid by the non-custodial parent a specific amount. It's all based on a chart.
Gotcha. Now my second question to that follow-up question would be, if in fact a father and mother have joint custody of a child, and either one of them pay child support, and they get behind on child support, can they lose their joint custody right?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
One has nothing to do with the other.
Okay. I'm trying to ask some of the questions that I think some listeners may have, because
Okay.
not always that people can sit down with a magistrate and get the information that you know.
Okay, one of the problems that most people have is that there's a lot of misinformation about child support. First of all, when child support is first established, it's generally established through the child support agency. The parties go in, they sit down with an agent at the child support agency, they bring their income information, they work out what the amount should be based upon the chart, and then they establish a child support order. What generally happens, though, is it takes 4 to 6 weeks before the order gets into the child support system. During that 4 to 6 weeks, because the non-custodial parent does not make any payments, so that when they finally get the order, they're behind already. So they're already in arrears child support, and that doesn't compute with them. They don't think about that, and I'm sure that the agents don't tell them about that. What they've got to do is they've got to start paying the child support immediately upon the effective date of the order. Now, it's hard to do that, though, because the child support agency doesn't even have an account set up for them immediately. So what I counsel people to do is, if you go to the child support agency and you set up a child support order amount, then you start putting that amount into a bank account, and then when you finally get the order in the mail, then you take your lump sum in and you pay it up so that you're current. Once you're current, then if you're employed, they can take it directly out of your pay, and you don't have to worry about getting behind anymore. If you get behind more than 60 days, they can suspend your driver's license, of course. And you want to avoid that at all costs. Also, they can report arrearages to the credit agencies. You don't want that either. So it behooves you to pay your child support and keep it current, if at all possible. Now, if you reach a situation where it's no longer possible for you to stay current, let's say you lose your job, the first thing you should do is go to the child support agency and tell them you lost your job, you're not able to make regular payments. The child support agency has programs that will assist you in finding other employment. One of the other things that I find that people don't do is if they lose a job for some reason, they don't apply for unemployment. It's, with many of them, it's a pride thing. I don't want to apply for unemployment. I don't want to be on unemployment. But they've got to understand, this is their money that they've paid in while they were employed. So they should go and apply for unemployment so that they can continue their child support and continue their current lifestyles as closely as possible. The other issue I have is with people who become disabled for one reason or another. If you become disabled, you need to go to the child support agency, take your medical documentation, and show that you're disabled. Then you need to apply for disability. And I hear too many people who go and try to apply for disability on their own, and they don't know how to do it, don't know what to do, don't know what documentation is necessary. But there are attorneys who advertise every day on TV and on the radio that they will assist you with your disability. I always tell people, go find one of those attorneys, help them assist you with your disability claim. Generally, on the first try, depending upon what your disability is, you're going to be denied. I don't know why that is. I won't get into that. But generally, they are going to be denied. You need to file the appeal right away and go through the appeals process. The same with unemployment. If you apply for unemployment and you're denied, you need to file the appeal and go through the entire process so that you could either have some income or at the end of the process, at least during that time, you've also been in contact with the child support agency and they're able to assist you. Now they have a program called Help Us Help You. And this is a program where they assist you in providing information concerning employers who are willing to hire you. So you need to take advantage of that. But if you lose your job, apply for unemployment. If you become disabled, apply for disability. And I think I'll stop right there for the time being.
Okay. Now, when you say that they turn you down the first time for disability, is that only for people who are on child support, or is that everybody across the board?
It applies across the board.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought you were saying like if you're on child support, you apply for disability.
It applies across the board.
Okay.
Getting disability through Social Security is difficult.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So now we've had the child support cases. We have the custody cases, number 2. What's number 3?
Well, custody and visitation I put in together.
Okay, so custody and visitation together.
Yeah.
So what would number 3 be?
Number 3 would be property.
Poverty.
Property.
Oh, property.
Property.
Okay, so is this concerning divorced couples?
Yes, division of your property.
So tell us a little bit about that. Just a little bit. I know we're gonna run out of time, but give us a little bit of information on what kind of cases you've heard where property was an issue with divorce.
I can tell you that the difficulty with property issues is that we have people who property is supposed to be divided equitably, not equally, but equitably. That's what the statute says, equitably. So you've got to just look at your marital property and decide how you and your spouse or former spouse can divide your property so that you each kind of can continue the kind of lifestyle that you had while you were married as much as possible. That includes alimony, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So if one person is making a huge income and the other one is making a smaller income, it's not necessary that that person receive an equal amount or an amount of alimony that will make their incomes equal, but they should receive an amount that makes their incomes equitable so that they can at least continue the lifestyle that they had while they were married. And the thing about alimony is alimony doesn't continue for life anymore. Generally, alimony is limited to probably about 5 years in most cases, depending on the age of the parties and their various incomes and their educations and things of that nature. The only time you would get what's called permanent alimony is if the person is, let's say, over 50 generally, and they have not worked. so that they're not able to get a job where they can take care of themselves in the style to which they become accustomed, so to speak.
So let me ask you this question. You know, when I went through my divorce, when it came to property, you know, when we were married, I used to have the salt in the salt shaker. But when we divorced, she took the salt out the salt shaker. And I want to know if I can go back and have her charged for taking the salt out the salt shaker. I'm joking.
I'm just going to tell you, it's too late. Once the divorce case is over, generally divorce cases are over.
Okay, gotcha.
The other thing with divorce cases, I need to say this, is people, if they're going to get divorced, they know they're going to divorce. They need to sit down, act like adults, and decide what they're going to do, how they're going to divide their property. They need to decide the issues regarding the children, custody, visitation, and child support. We're talking about adults here who should be able to make adult decisions without having the court always involved. Now, but if they can't do it, there's a company, a free company called Community Mediation. It's in the 3300 block of Greenmont Avenue. They provide free mediation services for custody, visitation, child support, and divorce. All you have to do is go in and sit down. They've got a trained mediator who will assist you in reaching these kinds of decisions. Then you can make out your divorce complaint, and you can make out your order, and you can take it in, and you can file it, and get divorced like that.
Wow, wow. Now, what about when it comes to like actual property, like owning a house and you divorce, and you both names on the house, both names on the deed, and both parties are going separate ways? Now, like, do they have a certain amount of time to sell the property, and like, how does that work? How does the court favor in that situation?
Well, now in that case, the property is generally divided equally, meaning if there's a mortgage, then somebody's got to be responsible for the balance of that mortgage, and then the other party is entitled to their share of the equity in the property. And generally in that case, we try to make that equal. So let's say you buy your house is valued at $100,000 and you got a $25,000 mortgage, so you'll split the $75,000 equity, and then somebody's got to take over the balance and pay off the balance of the mortgage if they want the property deeded to them. If they don't want the property deeded to them, then generally they'll sell the house, pay off the mortgage, and split the proceeds. And generally we'll split the proceeds equally.
Wow. Now, what about a car? What if my wife has a car and it's in her name, but I'm driving, I put all the gas in it and I get it fixed, and we divorce. I get it, right? I got to put all the gas in it?
Do you have a car?
Yeah, I have a car.
I mean, is there only one car in the family?
Yeah, it's one car.
There's only one car in the family?
One car in the family.
How old is the car?
6 years old.
Is there a balance due on the car?
Now, the car paid for.
Okay. Does she want the car?
She want the car.
And you want the car?
And I want the car.
We sell the car and split the proceeds.
Wow. So she's not entitled to it even though her name is the only one on the title?
If the car was bought during the marriage, doesn't matter whose name is on it.
Wow.
If the house is purchased during the marriage, doesn't matter whose name is on the deed. It's still considered marital property.
Wow.
All property acquired during the marriage is marital property. Doesn't matter whose name is on the deed or the title.
Wow. Man, that's some great information, man. Mr. William, I want to say thank you for taking the time to come out on the show, man, and share all this good information. I hope this helps some people who probably needed this information. Now, and you're retired now. How long have you been retired? You said since June or July of last year?
Well, I retired June the 30th. I was recalled, and then I retired again in August, and then I was recalled, and I retired the final time in November.
Wow. So what are you doing now, man? You just chilling?
I'm learning to be retired.
Learning to be retired. All right, I like it. Thank you, man. Thank you for taking the time to come out on the show. Y'all give Mr. Bloom a great hand. Clap and applause for coming.